Hello, NYWCites, and welcome to another trip down Nostalgia Avenue as I have another DVD review of NYWC, which took place back on February 25th, 2006. Alright, I was at this show myself, and the show begins with Brett Matthews and Brian Myers, who respectively later became Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, come to the ring with their manager, Prince Charles. Charles takes the microphone and he introduces the crowd to their personal timekeeper, Blake Morris, their personal referee, Benny Martinez, and Charles's personal bodyguard, Bruno Marciano. I believe it was one of them, Matthews or Myers. They eventually got their hands on the microphone, talked about that they became two-time NYWC Tag Team Champions the previous month at the Psycho Circus, and they had recently signed developmental contracts with the WWE, and there was a bunch of white and purple balloons with Myers and Matthews on them that were set up above the ring, and they were pulled down for a bit of a celebration over that. But then out comes Silent But Violent, Josh Daniels and Quiet Storm. Those guys were a great team. And they come out, and that leads up to the scheduled matchup, which saw Silent But Violent challenge Brett Matthews and Brian Myers for the Tag Team Championship. I do remember Betty eventually got in the ring and would make a 3 count for Quiet Storm. Storm grabbed him and nailed him with a roaring elbow, and let's just say Benny wound up limp as a biscuit from that. Eventually Myers and Matthews scored the win to retain the Tag Team Championship. Next was a return bout from Psycho Circus a month earlier, as Plasma, who later became Trent Beretta, defeated Maverick, who later became Premier Athlete Tony Nese, to retain the Hi-Fi Championship. The previous month at Psycho Circus, Plasma defeated Maverick in a one-on-one match to become the very first Hi-Fi Champion. Next, it was time for tag team action, as Mikey Whipwreck and Matt Hyson, who we know as Spike Dudley, did battle with Rob Echoes and Billy Bax. Echoes and Bax were collectively known as the Valedictorians down in ECWA, and were tag team champions and were very successful down there. The match was on, and Echoes and Bax eventually got the win over Whipwreck and Hyson. Next matchup, we saw Dan Dynasty do battle with Shockwave, who had a great Transformers influence on himself. He even came out to the theme of the 1986 Transformers movie. Shockwave ended up defeating Dan Dynasty. Next up, in another return bout from Psycho Circus a month earlier, way before he was a Devil's Outlaw or a Deathmatch Asgardian, Stockade took on Spider one-on-one. And eventually out come the Dead Presidents, Low Lincoln, Low Rider, and Boog Washington, Boogaloo, and attacked both Stockade and Spider. The match ended up a no contest. Next, we saw the Grim Reaper challenge Javier for the Interstate Championship. Now, there was one guy in the crowd. He was really giving Reaper a hard time, and at one point during the match, when Reaper had the edge on Javi, Reaper looked right at him and said, "You're fat." And don't know, this guy obviously doesn't come to the shows anymore, whoever he is. Javi really had Reaper going, and eventually Reaper leaves the ring and deliberately gets counted out. Javi won the match by countout to retain the Interstate Championship. Javi's about to go through the curtain, but Reaper's right there, hits him with a wooden board, which I guess many thought it was a 2x4, and everybody was yelling, "Ho!" a la for Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And Reaper did a number on Javi with the board. Okay, I know they went to intermission when I was there for that one. But after intermission, we saw the BS Express, Tony Berman and Mike Spinelli, accompanied the ring by Crusher Dugan and JT Tackleberry, who we know as JT Kaysen, later became part of the Dirty Rednecks, Reckless and Wasted, and currently a member of the Beer Belly Bandits. And out come the Angus brothers, Billy and Danny, for a scheduled tag match. Dugan, I think, took the microphone. He said, "You know what? it's clear that it's 4 against 2. Out comes Joey Brajol, who later became Apollyon, and Mega way before he was king, and we had ourselves an 8-man tag team matchup, which saw the BS Express, JT Tackleberry, and Crusher Dugan defeat Joey Brajol, Mega, and the Angus Brothers. Next up, in a great singles matchup, we saw Jerry Lynn defeat the all-around best Xavier. Next matchup, we see Ken Scampy coming into the ring, and the previous month at Psycho Circus, Scampy and Dan Barry, the original Team Tremendous, had lost the Tag Team Championship to Myers and Matthews, and after that match ended, Scampy had turned on Barry. Scampy comes to the ring acting like a goofy fisherman, which was a gimmick he was known for, the character he was known for. And Scampy takes the microphone and says, "Hey, is this what you people want?" And he says, "Well, that's not what I want." And eventually out comes his opponent, Damian Dragon, accompanied to the ring by Foxy Dreams, which is Damian's real-life wife. And the match was on, and eventually Scampy defeats Damian Dragon. Out comes Dan Barry, who was looking for some payback for what happened at a previous month at Psycho Circus. But then all of a sudden, Foxy hits Barry in the balls, and she leaves the ring with Scampy, and she's telling Damian, "Let's go." Then we see up on the wall there was a video package about what went on with the Solution, Papa Don and Havoc, where I think someone hit the other guy during the Psycho Circus match, and Havoc showing the footage to their manager, the Sure Thing, John Shane. Papa Don walks in the room, and he says, "What's he doing here, John?" And John says to them, "Hey, you know, neither one of you is returning my phone calls. You guys are the solution. We got to resolve this problem." And then eventually they chase the camera, and they show another video where John Shane got word from NYWC that he was going to be the guest referee when Papa Don and Havoc go one-on-one, and that the loser was going to have to leave NYWC. John Shane comes to the ring, and you know, he takes the microphone, and I forget what he tells the crowd, but one dude in the crowd, he says to John Shane, "Walk it on back, bitch." And eventually the promo ended, and the match was on, and there was this one guy sitting right near me. I don't know how old this guy was. I don't know if he was a teenager or if he was like 20-something at the time. I guess he was so let down with the match, or so bored with himself, that he stood up. I don't know if I can give you a good example here on camera, but I'll hold that thought. Stood up. Oh, maybe I can do it this way. Hold it. He stood up, and he's flailing his arms like this. And when somebody in the crowd yells to him, "Sit the fuck down, fairy!" Well, I mean, that was silly what that guy said. But when Papa Don had the advantage in the matchup, he looks to our direction. I forgot what Papa Don said, but this aforementioned guy that was flailing his arms, he says, looks right at Papa Don, and I'm not bullshitting when I say this. He looks right at Papa Don, he says, "I want to fuck you." No joke, folks. And Papa Don, I guess he got Papa Don good, because Papa Don didn't have a response to that right then and there, and he just went back to working over Havoc. Ugh. Eventually, I think Papa Don was going to use a chair on Havoc, but referee John Shane, he has the chair in his hands, and I think they're trying to like play tug of war with it, and then eventually John gets the chair, ends up winning that tug of war. I think Papa Don lets go, and John accidentally hits Havoc with the chair. Then Papa Don felt Havoc was going to be easy picking, but then John hits Papa Don with the chair. He makes a 10 count, calls for the bell, and ring announcer Nick Verona announced to the crowd that it was a double count and that both members of Solution would have to leave NYWC. John then takes his referee shirt off and he says to both Papa Don and Havoc, "You broke my heart." And then he walked out of the ring. And at that point, the fans were chanting, "Na na 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 na, hey hey, goodbye," because both members of Solution were going to have to leave NYWC. Then, the main event of the evening, we see Mason Rage challenging Dickie Rods with Crusher Dugan for the heavyweight championship. A short time before this show took place, Mason had signed a WWE developmental contract, and I think he was going to be going off to OVW a few months later. The match was on, and I do remember at one point, Ref Andre, I think somebody bumped into him accidentally, and out came referee Chris Jackson, who I understand at the time NYWC was trying to make him like the Danny Davis / Nick Patrick ref, being so favorable towards the heels. At that point, Ref Andre eventually gets up, nails Chris Jackson with a stunner. Mason eventually hits Dickie Rods with a big press slam and pins him to win the heavyweight championship. Mason goes around the ring celebrating with the crowd. Mason's mom and dad were there that night. And truth be told, as great as this show was, this particular NYWC event ended after 11 p.m. due to all the matches and I guess the length of the matches, and also with the intermission that happened that night. But you know, this was a pretty good show, right? Nice way to keep things going at the time, right after Psycho, especially after Psycho Circus. This was a show a month after the Psycho Circus took place. I definitely hope you NYW sites want more of my DVD reviews, because I still got a whole bunch of them going as I talk about them from the early days. So hopefully you'll leave comments on this one, and I'll definitely have another one coming in the future.